I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in Republican colleagues that are egging President Trump on, and I'm even more disappointed in Republican colleagues that are staying silent.
We caught up with Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine today. He told us how his Republican colleague let him down by going along with the president's charade. And now Bill Barr is also joining Trump's side. And the Attorney General just given federal prosecutors the authority to pursue allegations of voter fraud before results are certified. If this sounds a little different than normal, you would be right. This is a reversal of long-standing Justice Department policy that avoids taking action that could influence election results. Right after the policy was announced, the DOJ official who oversees election fraud investigations, he stepped down. I want to read now from his post where he notifies his colleague via email why. Having familiarized myself with the new policy and its ramifications, he wrote, I must regretfully resign from my role as director of the Election Crimes Branch. In the meantime, several of the Trump campaign lawsuits have already been dismissed or rejected by judges, but they're pushing ahead nonetheless with even more frivolous suits. The latest one seeking an injunction to stop the certification of the election in Pennsylvania due to irregularities. State Attorney General says it is totally without merit. Trump and his allies, they're pressing on, saying that voter fraud rampant, but they presented exactly zippo when it comes to evidence to prove it. I want to bring in my guest to discuss elections law attorney Marc Hershovitz. He joins us right now. And Marc, I think we're all inured to the crazy, but the idea that literally a week after the elections, now, before even certification, DOJ is inserting himself, and we saw the head of the branch that overseeing election integrity quitting as a result. Just talk how out of the norms this is, when, by the way, historically, we've had closer elections than what happened last Tuesday.
This is ridiculously outside the norms. I mean, it's not even in the same zip code or planet. This is completely and totally unprecedented.
I've in a lot of conversations I've had on and off the air, even Republicans who said, you know, yeah, Biden's the next president. There's always this caveat where they'll say there was fraud, but probably not enough to undo an election. And I haven't seen enough pushback to this. Help me out, Marc. You've forgotten more than I know. What fraud has been proven whatsoever? We're making it sound like, well, the rounding number's not high enough. First of all, that presumes there's only fraud one way, but I'm missing it. Have you seen evidence of fraud whatsoever?
Absolutely not. Not only is there, there's zero evidence of fraud whatsoever. If there was fraud, all of the down ballot races would be tainted as well, and no one is complaining about the down ballot races at all. This is something that is concocted by the president and his enablers trying to sow doubt about the election. Pennsylvania, the margin is more than 47,000. Michigan, it's more than 146,000. Georgia is 12,000. Wisconsin is 234,000. If there was any fraud whatsoever, we would already know about it. It's impossible not to have evidence if there is in fact fraud. This is all about sowing doubt about the election to try to retain power, even though the voters have already spoken.
You know, Marc, in the run-up to the election, I was going through some old sound bites, and we've had Republicans on record as saying, listen, the bigger the turnout, the harder it's going to be for us. And clearly there's been a conscious effort throughout the years for voter suppression. We talked about voter intimidation. Name all the bad things this has happened. But Lindsey Graham, and I'll give him credit, he said out loud, he said, and I'm quoting, if we don't do something about mail voting, we're going to lose the ability to elect Republicans. Now, I've got the two sitting Georgia senators who are up for a recount in January. They want to have the Secretary of State of Georgia fired. I should note, he's a Republican because he didn't find fraud. Again, just so people think this doesn't happen every election cycle, I've never seen anything like this.
Well, there's never been anything like this. Everybody is entitled to a free and fair election. They are not entitled to a perfect election. And so in any election, there are going to be isolated incidents that should not happen. But the question is, do those isolated incidents, when aggregated, give rise to a question or doubt about the result of the election? So if this election were like 2000, where there was 537 votes and there was some irregularities, that was the margin, 537 votes that George W. Bush defeated Al Gore in Florida. That's one thing, but here we're seeing a sizable victory, and this is people who are seeking to cast doubt on the election just making stuff up. I mean, there was a election case here in Georgia that the Trump campaign filed, and the judge all but laughed them out of court, saying there has to be evidence. And there is no evidence whatsoever about anything that raises doubt regarding the result of the election. Joe Biden was legitimately elected in large numbers over Donald Trump.
And listen, after 4 years, I don't think anyone's surprised that, you know, out of whole cloth, false narratives or just made-up stories will come from the White House. But to have sitting U.S. senators, to have the Attorney General of the United States, by the way, our Attorney General of the United States aiding and abetting this is what concerns me. And listen, there's been this, I'm not trying to get too in the weeds, but the Supreme Court decided to at least have a set aside for certain ballots in Pennsylvania that came, you know, in that 3-day window after the election, not to throw them out, but at least preserving them. That's not going to change Pennsylvania. To this point, SCOTUS has said, you know, don't bring it to my desk as of yet. Do you have full confidence the Supreme Court is not going to get involved? Because really there's no reason for them to get involved. There's been nothing with any merit to this point. Or do you see any scenario where, even though we think this is resolved and delaying the inevitable, some kind of craziness could happen?
There is no way that the Supreme Court gets involved in deciding this election. And here's why. The presidential election is, in essence, an election amongst 50 different state elections. And so in 2000, it came down to one state. Here, there are 5 different states, all of them at various different large margins in favor of Joe Biden. In order for a case to get to the Supreme Court and make a difference, it would have to be not just one, it would have to be something like 5 different cases. And that's just like drawing a straight royal flush on 5 consecutive hands. It's just not going to happen.
Mark, I really appreciate the time. Thank you as always.
My pleasure.
All right, everyone, when we come back, Election Day, it wasn't just about the White House or even for that matter, Congress. There were also some ballot measures, some really shocking things that became legal in several states, including in our viewing area. We come back, Andrew will join me and tell us what those were.